Good morning, everybody. As we start the chitas of the day,
Good morning.
holding the today is Tuesday, the third reading of the portion of Eschanon, which we're holding on chapter 4, verse 41. Oz Yavdil Moshe Shleisha Arim. Then Moshe Rabbeinu decided to separate three cities, Be'ever HaYarden, Mizrach Shemesh, on the other side of the Jordan towards the sunrise. So he divided the three cities in the land of Israel as cities of refuge really before. Now he added another three cities on the other side of the Jordan. Rashi says of Yavdil, the future form of Yavdil instead of the past form Hivdil. Moshe Rabbeinu set his heart to hasten, to implement the manner to separate them. And even though they were not to serve as cities of refuge until those in the land of Canaan would be separated, which would be many years later, a good 14 years later, until the cities of the refuge in Israel will be established. Why do you need to do it right now over here? But Moshe Rabbeinu, when he had a mitzvah, when he had a command by God, he did it ASAP. On that side, which is on the east side of the Jordan. Verse 42, so that a murderer, unintentional murderer, can run there in the other side of the Jordan as he can run in the land of Israel. He does it when he does it unintentionally. There's no malice against the person. He by mistake killed him. And that person that kills somebody unintentionally will run to this city, and he'll live. As Betzer Bamidbar, Meretz Mishar, he put one city in Betzer, in the desert, in the plains of the country of Ruvain, where Ruvain lived. Whereas Ramas Begilad Giladi, and Ramas in Gilad for where the tribe of Gilad lived. That's Golan Babashan Manashi, and the Golan in Bashan to the tribe of Manasseh. This is the Torah that Moshe Rabbeinu set forth before the Jewish people. This one means the one he's going to start talking in the next week's parsha. These are the testimonies and the laws. These are the laws that Moshe Rabbeinu taught the Jewish people for the time when they went out of Egypt. These they were the very same ones that we spoke to them when we went out of Egypt, and he taught to them in the plains of Moab. Moshe Rabbeinu wanted to make sure that every Jew would know the Torah before he would pass away. So every single Jew would know the entire Torah. In the other side of the Jordan, by Gai, in the valley, Mul Beis Per, opposite Beit Per, Be'eretz HaSicha, in the land of Sicha Melech HaModi, Asher Yeshe B'Cheshbon, who situated himself in Cheshbon. Asher Hika Moshe B'nei Yisrael B'tzei Yisrael, which Moshe Rabbeinu and the Jewish people smote after they went out of Mitzrayim, actually 40 years later. By Yishur Sartzei V'Eretz Oig, they possessed his land, Sicha, and also the land of Oig, Melech HaBashan, Malcha Ameri, these were the two kings of the Amorite kings, Asher Be'eva Yardim Mizrach Shemesh, which lived on the other side of the Jordan, towards the sunrise. Asher Be'eva Yardim, which is the east, because the other side was the west. This means the opposite of the western side. Mararel Asfas Anacha Anar, Barha Shiain, Hu Cherman. From Arer, which is the banks of the river of Arnon, to Mount Sion, which is Cherman. The Chol Arava, and all the plains across the Jordan, Evayad, Mimizrach, Vayam Arava, Tachas Asher Piskad, eastward as far as the sea plains, under the waterfalls of the hills. That completes the Chumash of today. We now go to the Tanya of the day. After we are in the Geras HaKodesh. We are in the letters The holy letters of the Alter Rebbe are in the fourth letter of the Alter Rebbe, and the Alter Rebbe is explaining a concept in Chassidus, a concept of Kabbalah, the concept of Asrusa de Le'ela, Asrusa de Latata. That there's a constant awakening from below, that's called Asarusa de Latata, and there's a concept of awakening from above, Asarusa de Le'ela. And the Alter Rebbe says over here that every Asarusa de Le'ela, any awakening from above, needs to come first through an awakening of below. So there needs to be some movement in this world by a human being to have some response from the upper world. That's why the Eibishter put into motion. That even though everything comes from above, but God wanted that a human being should do something in this world to awaken up and elicit a response from the upper world. However, it's well known that an arousal from above is only in response to arousal from below. So when a Jew or human being does something, does chesed in this world, that awakens up chesed in the upper world. In explanation, a man's soul is stimulated from above only in response to the spiritual service that he initiates here and below. So too it is in the neshama. In the neshama, which is a chelik elakam mal mamash, neshama, which is a part of God, is awakened above through his service below. Even if using the divine benevolence that comes exclusively from above, it can neither be brought into being nor drawn down by man's service alone, also awaits the previous arousal from below. So even a chesed that we mentioned before, a chesed that comes from above and beyond human beings' ability to awaken, still needs to have something here from below. Still needs to have some aspect of chesed, that even though this chesed that he had from above, that he had from below, is no connection to the chesed that God's going to show him, nevertheless, he needs to have something from below. And this is the concept of Chassidus, what is called Bechinas Alos Mayim Nukvin. This is the elevation of the feminine waters, Mayim Nukvin. It's called in Kabbalah Mayim Nukvin. Feminine waters. Feminine waters means an arousal from the feminine waters, by which the recipient elicits the Mayin Duchin, the masculine waters from above, the downward flow, masculine waters, emanated from the giver. That's the way the Eibishter wants it. So we are all, the Shamis itself, it's feminine. We are all the concept of feminine. We're all feminine. And we wake up the feminine waters from below, that we are the receiver and God is the giver. Our blessed memories brought on the Gemara. The rabbis say, "Ain't tippy as lamaila, drop of rain doesn't descend from above, with two corresponding drops first descending from below. Every drop of rain needs to have two drops coming from below. That's the way in nature that the water comes from below, goes up to above. So every one drop needs two drops. So that's the way the Eibishter made it. It needs to be a sarusa latata. It needs to be that the water comes from below, goes into the clouds, and now you have rain. So the Eibishter made, that's the way it is. So actually, you need to have more from below to bring down one drop from above. Therefore, even though the Eibishter will circumcise you, that's the ultimate chesed. We mentioned that yesterday. That God will we ask God to circumcise ourselves, circumcise us, and take off that covering from us. But that doesn't work. You can't go to sleep and ask God to circumcise you. You have to do a little bit over here, do a little bit over here, even a little bit. And they will still do the rest. Therefore, a person must be forced, he must do a circumcision on himself. To take away the covering of his heart. Whether it's a hard coarse covering or a thin covering. which covers over the essence of his heart. A person needs to do that. He needs to do something. Can't expect that God's going to come down and circumcise and take away all his the harshness of his heart if he's not going to do something on his own. And every person needs to. There's an expression: "Make me open up for me the head of a needle, and I'll open up for you the width of a very wide width." But you need to start with opening up. I need to start with opening up something, even the width of a needle. I need to do something, and that's Zihi B'chinas Avetz Hashem. So waking up the innermost point of my soul is the innermost point is the love of God, which is a spirit that it's for the sake of my life. That I feel the relation with God is the sake of my life. It's not just an extra thing; it's the sake of my life. We mentioned this yesterday. She be gullus, which right now it's in gullus, it's in exile, in the pleasures of this world. So I have to break it a little bit. I got to uncover the pleasures of this world to reveal the pnimis libi. The physical desires likewise exist in the spirit of the phrase for the sake of my life. That's the problem. As we say, just like God put it into the yin and the yang. So like there's a concept of in Kedusha that everything is for the sake of God. There's also in the taiva, I have that this is for my sake, it's my life. I can't live without it. For the desires of my life, I can't live without it. I have to change a little bit that I can't live without the desires of my life, that I can't live without the connection, my love to God. It is thus possible for an individual to do so, dedicated to his passion and desire that our entire life. Just as this state exists in holiness, it also is the counterpart in the opposite direction, whereby one is immersed in desire to the innermost core of his heart and being. That's the way it is. I have a taiva. That's why it's called a taiva. Called a desire because it affects me to the essence of my being. How does one do that? How does one go flip over his desire of life, his taiva in life, to desire to do desire in it? Which mitzvah can do that? And that's the power of tzedakah. That's without that becomes down to a full circle. Comes to a full circle. He started off this chapter with the power of tzedakah, that the tzedakah is in a way greater than all mitzvahs. Because if you understand that we have to change, a mitzvah was there because it's a connection of God. And we need to ultimately have that feeling in a mitzvah, like we have the feeling in eating steak. Which mitzvah affects the taivas of my life? Which mitzvah affects a desire in my life? Which mitzvah would be the antidote to all the desires of my life? Which mitzvah? Putting on tefillin. Which mitzvah? Which mitzvah can do this? And that's the mitzvah of tzedakah. Because tzedakah is something that I take money. We're talking about money here. When I take money, that I can buy the pleasures of my life. And I could have taken that money and buy the pleasures of my life, which I believe I need. I wouldn't buy it if I didn't think I needed it for the existence of my life. And I give it to somebody else. There's no mitzvah that is the antidote for the concept of the opposite of kedusha, which is, we're not talking about Veda. Taiva, having desires of your life is not a sin, but it's the desire taivas elam haza, to have beautiful things, to buy more beautiful things, to buy more the better food. These are all things that I believe that I need for the existence of my life. And I take that money, and instead of buying that taiva, that delight, I give it to somebody else. I give it to something else. That is unbelievable. Because nobody's forcing you to give tzedakah, And you could have taken that dollar with $100 or $180 or whatever that amount of money is, and you could have bought something for yourself. What's wrong? Nothing wrong buying something for yourself. And you need it. You need it. I need it. Chayanafshe. That's what it's called chayanafshe. It's my necessities. You're going to tell me that I don't need it? I need it. I need it. And now I take it and I give it to somebody else. That is unbelievable. That's where you change. That's why it's tzedakah. Taking something that you could have bought for your own needs, for your own pleasures, and you gave it away. There's nothing more powerful to be an antidote to my nefesh habahamis, to my animalistic soul, and the desires of my life, and to transform it into kedusha, than the power of tzedakah, than giving that $100 to charity. In tzedakah lavaya, this removal, that's the best way. That's why we give tzedakah before we daven, and that's why you should give tzedakah every morning. First thing you do is give tzedakah. Right? You're trying to take the foreskins. You're trying to open up your heart. You're trying to go away from the desires of my heart to the desires of God. I need to do a milah. I need to do a circumcision. What I can do? What's the best circumcision? Tzedakah. Because that is truly circumcises my heart. I have now taken away part of what I can enjoy, and I gave it to somebody else. Nothing greater and more powerful than doing the Maisad Tzedakah, the action of giving charity, helping somebody else. Money, we're talking about money. This is actually talking about cash. Because that is Chayin Nafshi. I could have taken the dollar, I could have taken the $100, I could have taken the $1,000, and I could have used it for myself. I could have used it in a positive thing. I could have bought myself a nicer tefillin. I could have bought myself a nicer. Nothing, no aveda. We're not talking about taking the money and using it for something negative. I did myself. I'm entitled to. It's my money. I worked for it. I slaved for it. I worked hard on it, and now I want to enjoy it. Nothing, no aveda, enjoying your money. You should enjoy your money. But then I take that money and I say, you know what? I'm not going to use it for myself. I'm going to give it to somebody else. I'm going to make somebody else happy. There's no greater power than that. That is me'ilah. That is circumcision of your heart. So that's what he said. The removal. And this removal of the spiritual foreskin, my own foreskin, is achieved by giving charity to God from one's money, which is his vitality. It's the vitality of my life. I live off of this money. As noted in the explanations, as noted earlier in chapter 37, that since money enables a man to purchase life's essentials, parting with it parting with it in favor of charitable ends is equated to giving the vitality to God. That's like I'm giving my vitality to a mitzvah. There's no mitzvah in the Torah that you can do this with, besides the mitzvah of tzedakah. Because money is chayin nafshay. That's the way the Eibishter made that you live. And the money that you generate, and the money that you worked for. Now this is Baruch Hashem. Let's say you have the Eibishter gave a lot of money, but what happens if you don't have money? You take me befrat misha v'zeh mitzomtzim. Let's take a person who has income is limited with the chikle shaita tuva, and he doesn't have money. He's living paycheck to paycheck. That's really chayin nafshay. When he gives tzedakah, that's chayin nafshay. When a person who lives paycheck to paycheck takes that $18 and gives it to tzedakah, that's real stuff. When he gives this tzedakah, he's giving from his life. This especially if he supports himself by the toil of his hand. She actually also been Pamarabi's visions to cruise people for it's impossible that his work did not often involve the innermost point of his heart, the depths of his heart. This is his life. He needs to put his whole effort into his job to make a living. It's not easy to make a living. And he had to put his whole life into this job, into making panosa, hours and sweat and toil. And we all do this. And we worked hard for that dollar. And Baruch Hashem, we got the dollar. And we gave it to God. How powerful is that? Nothing more powerful than that mitzvah. When a person sweats for Gashmias, and he then takes the dollar and gives it to tzedakah. Nothing more powerful. That's the power of tzedakah. As its way, normal people work hard to make a living, whether you're rich or poor. To make a living is a hard job to do. Thus now, when he distributes the fruit of his toil, unstingily, despite his circumstances, he gives what he can give, and he doesn't do it with a pain. He doesn't do it with a. It's not easy. He gives it with nice of the simcha. He gives it tzedakah with joy, the gladness of his heart. You know what happens? These powerful words of the Alter Rebbe. This is the greatest asrusa de you can have. This is the greatest awakening from the below that you can have. Because thereby he redeems his soul from the pit. That's why it says, charity saves from death. Not only physical death, spiritual death. There's nothing more powerful than the mitzvah stuff. That in the chin, it's going to above. Thus, he redeems the innermost point of his heart. She bechin is gullus that was in gullus, that was in exile. Vishivia was captive. Whether he was captive in a thick shell or a thin shell, because he was worked his whole heart. We call it mishmar nitzer lebecha. Guard your heart from all greatest with the greatest vigilance. Guard your heart from every mishmar. Mishmar pillars beis asurim. Mishmar, the meaning of a mishmar, we call mishmar is also could be from jail. The verse is also exhorting us to guard our hearts from being imprisoned and exiled in flippers of desire. After and through this act of charity, I redeemed my soul, redeemed it from the forces of evil, in which it has been imprisoned. My act now has redeemed my neshama. And this is also the concept of priya, the spiritual removal of the foreskin, the second cutting of the small membrane of the foreskin. The pirat chayv, removing a debt, where the individual in question has become indebted and subjected to the forces of evil that has ruled within him over the innermost point of his heart. He has to push it, get out of debt. My klippus have put me in debt to God. And now I am indebted to the evil forces of my existence. And how do I get out of this? Zion will redeem with justice, and its captives, its captives. What I mean, the captives, it's translating the verse in a spiritual sense. The captives of the soul, those who put the soul in captivity. The soul doesn't have its darkness, its captivity and darkness. It's dark. It is nothing more powerful than actually to redeem this neshama with the act of charity. And thus we can understand the meaning, according to us, her former spiritual captives shall be redeemed through the act of tzedakah. And that's the full circle that we learned. And the power he started, after Rebbe started this letter with the concept of tzedakah, he ended off with the concept of tzedakah. He just explained it to each and every one of us, the great power of us giving tzedakah. And therefore, as we know, that Rebbe said, you should have a pushka in your house, and you should always give every day tzedakah. And you should do it as soon as the earliest in the morning. Wake up in the morning, give tzedakah. If you go to shul, we always give tzedakah. It's not the amount of money; it's the mitzvah. It's that concept that you're taking chayin nafshe. You're taking something that you could have bought your own pleasures of life, and you gave it away to charity. There's nothing greater. There's no greater asarus latata. There's no greater awakening from below to awaken to elicit an awakening from above, but the mitzvah of tzedakah. That completes the Tanya of today. Beautiful Tanya of today. And today is the 11th day of the month, and chapters from 60 to 65. 60 to 65, you do the chitas of the day. I wish you a beautiful, happy, wonderful day. God bless you all. And we'll see you tomorrow in Midshem when we will do 8 a.m. Continue. Have a great day, guys.